This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. The following Care Lab podcast does not provide health or medical advice. All content is provided for information purposes only. Listeners are encouraged to speak with their healthcare provider for specific healthcare advice and are wholly responsible for the outcome of implementing any tips or information presented.
Hi everyone, welcome to Care Lab.
It's Care Lab Day.
Yay!
I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you here. Okay, so obviously, we have Dr. Kimberly Wider here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her in a second. But first, I have a much more important question to ask both of you.
We're ready.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you are. Okay, but here we go. If you were a Spice Girl, which one? I can't even get it out. Which one would you be? Which Spice Girl would you be?
It's like we're telling on our generation, right?
100%.
Now everybody knows what generation we belong to.
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to Sporty Spice just because I feel like that's my style. Like if I could go around in cool jogger-like type pants and a sports bra and comfy shoes all the time, like that would be how I dress. So yeah, there's my answer.
That's a good one. Brandy?
I hate having to be pigeonholed into one thing. I don't like favorites. I don't have favorites. I don't like to pick one thing from anything. And I don't know why I have such a hard time with this. This is a complex I have. So I'm going to say...
This is a lighthearted question. Don't overthink it.
Too late.
I can't help it. I'm like, it's like
I know. Listen, we all know that you're a baby Spice, okay?
Okay, so...
That couldn't be further from the truth.
Further from the truth. I think that when they were really out, I was Sporty Spice. But now I feel like I resonate more with Scary Spice. Mm-hmm. And because I just wasn't confident enough to dress like that or wear my hair like that. Now I do. Or I did till I got locks. But so I'm going to go Scary Spice.
Okay. All right. So I would also say actually back in the day, I was Sporty Spice. Mm-hmm. Big time. And I think like that's I'm still, I'm probably wearing like tennis shoes or running shoes and leggings 90% of the time, unless I'm at work now. But here's my twist is that on occasion during karaoke, and if you are doing karaoke with a group of women, you are going to do a Spice Girls song. If you are in your late 30s to mid 40s, probably, which I am. So in that context, I am always Posh Spice, mostly because I have short hair and I don't sing at all. I just stand there making the Posh Spice like pouty face.
Mm-hmm.
I can see you as Posh Spice for sure.
Yeah, I just you can't really see it. There's not enough of me probably on camera right now, but I do like the whole like pose.
You're a poser.
I pose. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a poser. Thank you very much.
Listen to the word.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Totally meant it as like you look pretty when you. I mean, none of us are Spice Girl.
No, none of us are Spice Girls. For better or for worse, and that's probably okay. We are all women in business, and Kimberly, I'm gonna ask you obviously a little bit more about your business today, but let me do a quick introduction. So, Dr. Kimberly Wider is the CEO of Elder Care Solutions, and the mission of elder care solutions is to ensure that aging and caring for an aging loved one isn't going to financially break you. So I think keeping it short and sweet is helpful in these introductions. So I think that kind of says a lot of where we're going here. Kimberly, anything else that you would want to add to that? Or are you ready to like jump into this tough, hard hitting conversation about Spice Girls? No, not Spice Girls, about aging and finances.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to jump in. I'm so confident with my mission statement that it has laid the groundwork. So let's go.
It is a good mission statement. So paying for like planning to get older, paying for care, paying for someone else's care is really, really expensive. I think anyone who's listening to this who has an interest in it probably already knows that. But I think one of the things that's hard to understand is why is this so expensive? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I think it's really important to lay some of the groundwork to answer that question, because the answer helps you navigate a little bit. And so, first of all, most of us are just extremely surprised when we start helping out a parent or doing full-fledged care for a parent at how much money is just getting forked over to different businesses or entities or caretakers. And we're like, wait, I thought this was what Medicare was for, right? And so that's just this cognitive leap that everybody has to take, and we're not educated well in the United States to know that that's what the reality is going to look like. So some of the reasons why I said there's like this perfect storm brewing with our aged population right now. So we hear about baby boomers all the time, or as my kids, the boomers, which I am not, even though they'll stop, mom, stop being a boomer. So
you're of the Spice Girls generation. We've already established this.
We are not boomers.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, right. We know this.
Right. You and I, of our generation, though, we were educated some, like we heard a lot about the baby boomers, and probably a lot of what we heard about was like this huge giant generation, which is true. They are. It's a very big generation. But there are some other things that are very unique about them that has kind of flipped the aging landscape on its head. So one of those things is that they're living for a very long time. And so they are living 19 years on average longer than the generation right before them. So basically in one generation, 2 decades of life was gained in the US population, and really worldwide, but most of the data comes from the US. This means that when we start taking on the care of our aging parents, it's not a short experience anymore. So if we think about our parents who maybe stepped in and helped, like their mom or dad, it might have been like a 3 to 5 year experience. That's not it anymore. It's like 10 or 20 years of doing a lot of work for them. So that's one big thing. This is like a very long experience. The other thing is the way that they're aging is in a much more healthy way. So they are the first generation to have modern healthcare from the time that they were born all the way through their life. The generation before them did not have that. So they're aging in a much more physically healthy way, which means they do have conditions, but it's more of those chronic, well-maintained conditions. So the type of care that they need is not like your medical nursing care. It's long-term care. It's help with activities of daily living, which both of you are very familiar with because that is literally your professions. So,
but can we put an explanatory comma into, like, I don't know if you know this, but what is like kind of the definition of like modern healthcare?
Of modern
that's a good question.
Healthcare? Yeah, so that is
modern healthcare.
That is like we had advanced medicines and treatments in place. So a lot of things that were a death sentence to the generation before them, like diabetes, congestive heart failure, are now things you can completely live out your normal stage of life with. Like that won't be what kills you,
even like actually antibiotics probably too. I mean, antibiotics have not actually been around
not when we
for a crazy amount of time. I mean, I think that they arrived, like probably maybe a decade or two before someone out there is going to correct me on this. Please do, because I obviously don't know exactly. I'm not claiming to, but I want to say that antibiotics only arrived maybe a couple of decades before baby boomers came around. So yeah, that tracks.
And a lot of cancers are classified as chronic conditions today that, in the generation before them, somebody had a diagnosis of cancer and it was like, well, just lay down and wait to die. So they are dealing with these long-term conditions, many times, many of them layered on top of each other, that are well managed, but they need help like getting around and moving around better, and maybe with transportation, or making sure they're eating healthy, bathing, dressing, things like that. And that is something which leads us to the third point, that Medicare was never developed to cover. So Medicare, which is the big governmental support for our 65 plus year old population, was there for medical care. So like if you go to the doctor, the copay, if you have any kind of procedures, it'll cover those types of things. But when it comes to all the type of care that our aging loved ones need today, it's like, oh, we don't touch that stuff. We weren't designed for that. And so you have people who are living a very long time, need help for a very long time with types of help that nothing supports financially. And so now you're like paying out of pocket for all the kind of help that they actually need today. And just, if you want, like we did dates on the antibiotics, like Medicare was put in place in the 1940s and they've just like not touched it, just like let it. And a lot has changed. So that's
Maybe
why
there's
like
a few
these
things in 1940s.
conversations that happen where
Just a
they're
handful
wanting
of items.
yeah, when they're like wanting to talk about making updates, that's why people get like really involved. Like, oh my God, let's listen. What are they going to do? Because there's been nothing. There's been no update. So it is important for them to look at this and be like, oh, how are we aging in 2024? It's completely different than 1945. Yeah.
So that's kind of one thing, I guess, is that people are spending so much longer people are living longer, they're spending longer in their later years where maybe they're needing more care. And obviously that makes it so much more expensive just because of the amount of time that it has to be paid for. And Medicare isn't paying for this kind of work because it's not skilled, it's not medical based care. So, but do you have a sense of like why still, what makes it so expensive? Is it just the fact that there are so many people involved in actually providing all of the structures necessary in order to provide that kind of daily activity support? Or like, do you have a sense of that?
Well, just like let's drop ourselves in the day of a life of a family caregiver, let's say. So like Amelia, you're taking care of your dad right now. Dad's living in his own home. He wants to be there. You want him to be there, right? But because he has some trouble getting around his house independently, like you do not feel comfortable with him taking a shower, getting in and out of the shower and getting dressed without you being there, right? So you're going to tell him to like wait until you can be there, but you also are a mom and you work full time. So this is like, do you hold off on the showering? Do you have to bring him food because he can't cook for himself? Maybe he's not so great at driving, so whenever he needs to like go shopping or go to the doctor, like he's waiting for times that you can bring him. So if you're going to be like, Dad, like take a shower whenever you want or go wherever you need to, I'm going to bring someone in to help with that, which is what you'll instantly think of first, because otherwise you're going to wait until 6 p.m., 7 p.m. until I can come over and help you. And I'm exhausted because I worked all day and brought my kids to soccer practice, right?
Right. Yeah. And maybe Dad's exhausted too. And maybe he
doesn't want
can
to
barely
shower
even get in and
anymore.
out of the
Right.
shower at that point.
Exactly. And so that person who helps them is on average $25 an hour in like a moderate average American city. But we know like if you live in certain places where the price of living is higher, this is going to be a lot more expensive. And so, I mean, 4 hours, that's $100. But let's say they were there for 8 hours that day, so $200 a day for somebody to make sure that he got bathed, got fed, got around where he needed to. Somebody was there to make sure he didn't fall down. Like, that's expensive. And then do 200 times 5 days a week. Who's there on the weekends? And then add it up times how many weeks per month. And then all of a sudden, every month, it's thousands of dollars just to make sure he's safe because you have other competing life priorities. It's crazy.
Hey there, it's Amelia. Listen, I am so thrilled to have a great resource like Ask Sammy as part of the Care Lab team, and here's why. It's a game changer for aging in place because it makes it so simple. All you do is ask. Just type in your question or even tell Sammy what the problem is and get tailored solutions. Everything from innovative adaptive equipment to comprehensive resources. It's a great way to become more empowered, to live more independently, and to live with greater confidence. And my favorite thing about how Ask Sammy works is it's deeply rooted in dignity and practicality. So whether you're a fellow therapist, a care partner, or someone who's seeking solutions for themselves, visit www.asksammy.com. We're going to link it in the show notes so you can find it there. Start making home more accessible today. Now, back to the show. So how do you see and how are families supposed to navigate this?
Yeah. So I use an analogy of like, imagine either you're at a mall or you're standing in like a downtown place where there's like a street and tons of shops. Okay. You know what you need, but you have no idea what these shops sell. Like you see the signs, you see what they're called, and you're starting to get it like, okay, maybe they have what I need. So one, you have to navigate like all these different shops to be like, do they have what I'm looking for? Two, the instant you walk inside this shop door that you're like at the mercy of their sales. They're going to be like, oh, I totally have what you need. In fact, I have it for a really great price. Don't go to the person next door. They can't help you as good as I can, So you're very vulnerable on this, expedition down this shopping path. And so that's what people are navigating against. They have so many financial questions like, okay, do we have the important law documents in place so that if something happens and I have to make decisions, I can do that if dad can't make his own decisions? Are their bills getting paid, or are they like laxing on that? Can I have access to their bank account? What kind of retirement money do they have? Can we even touch that to use this to pay for care? And those are all different professionals. Like you need a banking professional, you need a financial advisor, you need an elder law attorney. So you have all these questions. They're answered by multiple people. Sometimes you don't know who those people
also
are.
All cost money to go to.
They all cost money. And if you just like go to them with like, I think I need help with legal stuff, what is it? They're going to start like selling you what they do. And then you're like, okay, well, they said I needed X, Y, and Z. And it was like $5,000. So that's what we did. So it's how I really try to work with families on how can we like empower them and flip that, where you can say, okay, I know I need a power of attorney, the living will, and the will. I need those things in place. So now I know exactly who to go to because I'll help them identify like the professional is called this. This is where you can go. And then they can sit down and say, I'm here to get these things in place. What does that look like if I work with you? And that is a much more empowered conversation. And they're like in the position of, I know what I want and I'm investigating to see if you're the right fit for it. Not, I need help with stuff. Just tell me what all I need and I'll do whatever to make sure it gets fixed,
I think that's such an important point because you just named 3 professionals of many that have to deal with just the legal aspects of finances. And like that is overwhelming, much less all the other things too, that you didn't even highlight. Like, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I think that's, I try to tell people it's okay to feel overwhelmed because it is overwhelming and you're not like doing a bad job, like, and like the fact that you feel like you don't know where to go or what to do, or like there's so many calls to make and stuff like that is like normal, unfortunately. Like we
Yeah.
want to, I think all of us are doing different things in these corners of senior care, in order to make that process easier for family caregivers. But nobody expects to deal with it in this way. And I think it's also really challenging because if you're doing life right, you're going to get old, and your body's going to change, and your mind's going to change, and you need somebody to care for you. And like we all are going to end up in this position, either as a caregiver or as needing care. But we don't have good systems in place that are like universal, so that everybody knows, okay, this is happening and I need to do this. So I just wanted to highlight what you're saying, because I think it's such a great example, like with the shops and the people selling to you, especially if you're like a tourist in a different place and everybody's
Right. You're just kind of like, I don't
Come
know.
eat at my like all the cafes along the
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
and everyone has a special out, and you're like, I don't know, I feel like I just want to go where the locals eat, but it's totally unclear where that is. Sorry.
Exactly.
Like, there's hardly any life experience that you can bring to this new like care experience you're entering into that will help you learn what to do. So I've talked to a lot, especially women. I mean, I'm going to be real with you guys. We're all women. It's mostly women who are stepping into this care role,
Absolutely.
and those in our generation and older, like we're all also professional women. Like we've worked our whole lives, and so we have a lot of brilliance and experience that we're coming into the stage of life with. But I have met few women that felt like any of it translated into helping them. Like even those who were like, I was a legal aid and I thought, oh, I totally have a handle. And then I got in it and I was like, nope, way above what I thought I knew what was going to go on, or, so like, and most of us are moms, and like that caregiving journey with your child looks nothing like the caregiving journey with your parents. So it's like you can't bring anything to the situation where you're like, I've got this part, because everything just feels like new and foreign and weird. So yeah.
And you're still trying to balance everything else at the same time,
Absolutely.
too.
It's not like you
not
have
like
a lot
you can
of
be like,
time to
okay,
learn it.
I'm going to stop and focus
Everything.
on this one thing, because a lot of times you're not necessarily in the position to do that. And of course, when caregivers do end up having to really put everything on hold, change their whole lives in order to provide care, like that's not a small thing. It is completely financially life-changing. It's changes your roles, your routines, your responsibilities, your relationships with other people. Like it's not a small thing to do, if you can even actually step away and do that. So like what are when people call you at Elder Care Solutions, and I'm making some assumptions here because I know, like, as an occupational therapist, and I think Brandy can probably relate to this, when people see us, something has already gone wrong, right? People don't usually call us for the prevention stuff, even though we would love that, because we would way rather stop bad things from happening than have to help sort out, the problems afterwards. We're happy to do whatever, but it's better but we don't want bad things to happen to people. But usually if someone's calling us, it's because something's already gone wrong. And I imagine it's probably the same thing for you, Kimberly. Like if someone's calling you, something's probably already amiss. Like, so what's that thing that you get called for all the time?
So there's a mix, and I've actually seen that grow since I started in 2020. So it was very much people called in crisis mode, and crisis mode financially can look like, and this would be familiar to your space, like let's say mom fell down and broke her hip. She had the surgery. She got through the hospital stay. They put her in a rehab place where she was getting lots of beautiful rehab, but Medicare will say like, we're going to cover 90 days or 100 days of rehab, right? That's something that isn't always communicated well with the family. And so what they get is, okay, so in 4 or 5 days, we're going to be releasing mom to go home. And they're like, wait, what? And they're like, but we know what she looks like here, and she's not really ready to go home. And they're like, yeah, but Medicare's not going to pay past next Thursday. So we need you to be ready on Friday to get her back home. What is that going to look like? And they start like navigating this whole release, and they're like, wait, what? And then they realize like they're going to need somebody to come in and help because they are not equipped to help what mom looks like at that point. And so I've had multiple families come to me because that situation's happening to them. Like mom or dad needs to go home in X number of days. They did not anticipate this in any way. And they know they're not equipped to just like be at mom or dad's house with them 24/7, even though that's exactly what mom or dad needs. Is they cannot be independent right now. But
Right.
the financial coverage for what they were getting is just like stopping at this like strong red tape in the sand, so that happens.
Can I jump in here for just a second?
Sure.
And I'm going to say something that it's actually has nothing to do with financial stuff. So my apologies for going off topic here, but it is relevant to the story that you were just telling about, people being released from rehab because payer stops paying and they don't look like they did before. And one of the best things that people can do to help avoid that surprise is talk with the therapy team. Mm-hmm. These are the people that you need to be talking with in that rehab or in that skilled nursing facility in order to actually understand functionally what things are going to look like and how things are going to progress. So these are folks that you need to be speaking with frequently. And I was trying to think of another word that didn't sound like frequently, but basically that's what I'm saying. You want to have conversation, know these people. They're happy to have you call them, have conversations early and often so that they can help prepare you for that, because it really shouldn't be a surprise. And that's the team of folks who are going to let you know, okay, here's how progress is going. Here's where we think we're actually going to get. Because the thing is, sometimes we can't always make things exactly the way they were before. So it's really important to have those conversations and have realistic expectations and know as far in advance what that discharge is probably going to look like so you can plan for it. Okay, sorry. We can get back on topic now, but I just...
And I always think of this. I mean, I was in an allied health profession 3 professions ago. I was a lab scientist, so I have a lot of healthcare background, but when the 3 of us perhaps navigate healthcare with children or ourselves or our spouses or whatever, we have a totally different mindset because like we kind of know the flow, we understand what's happening, what the different healthcare professionals are there to do. And I always think about people who have none of that background. Yeah. It's just like wildly foreign and weird, and they just are going with the flow and trusting what they're being told, and they don't surprised at every turn.
Exactly.
It's so hard.
And honestly, there's so many people talking at that moment too, right? Like you need to know who this person is that's actually telling you this information, and what is their role in this care team? Is this a building administrator? Is it a nurse? Is it a marketer? Like you need to know that so you know where this information is coming from. Because I think people do try to genuinely provide like good information insofar as they can, but a lot of that depends on the perspective and the background of that particular individual.
Care Lab listener, I have a question for you. If someone you love needed a caregiver, what qualities would you want that caregiver to have? You probably want them to be reliable, trustworthy, kind, maybe just a generally dependable and good person, right? Second question, would you also want them to be trained? I'm gonna guess the answer is a definite yes. Okay, third and final question for you. Do you think it matters who gives that training? Like, is it cool if it's just in your body, or would you want that person to be a qualified expert? Assuming you do, in fact, love this person who needs a caregiver, you probably want the expert, right? Well, that's what Higher Standards Caregiver Training does. Higher Standards Caregiver Training provides 100% occupational therapist-led training for caregivers. Caregivers get taught everything from gold standard foundational skills for transfers and daily living tasks, all the way up to how to deal with specific diseases and injuries. And most importantly, they are taught all of these things in a way that is practical and enhances the participation of the person who needs the care. And it actually protects the safety of everybody involved. Why? because everyone deserves a higher standard. For a course for individuals or learning about training for care for organizations, find that information at higherstandardscaregivertraining.com. And to put a finer feather in the hat of this conversation is that we are trained to defer to the physician or the nurse practitioner about all matters. But once you transition into rehab, they are important, but that's not the main person you should be talking to, because they're actually going off of the therapy recommendations and the nursing recommendations as to how ready this person is to go home. And, frankly, you should be asking, when are they getting discharged when you get admitted? So that you have the maximum amount of time to prepare, and that everybody knows that you know what's going on and that they should talk to you about it. And that, all of us therapists want to talk to you, but
so badly.
We want to talk to you, but we don't know how many, there's multiple people on the list. Sometimes you're working. We don't want to have to bother you at work and make you feel like it's an emergency. And we try to tell the person directly, hey, make sure you tell your daughter when she comes in that XYZ, and that message hardly ever gets communicated. Sure. So please don't feel like it's a burden. Say, I want to talk to somebody on the therapy team, any one of them probably. And that's your key, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've also had families that maybe they had a parent in an assisted living community and they were settled and everything has been going pretty smoothly, but they've run out of money, because it's expensive. And they're like, no problem, the family, no problem, we're going to apply for Medicaid to cover this, because Medicaid will, if the money has run out. And they get approved, but then they go to that assisted living and they're like, okay, so next month, instead of charging us, we need to give you the Medicaid information because that's who's going to be paying. And then they get this surprising news oh, we don't accept Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have never thought that where their mother or their father has been for X number of years didn't take Medicaid payments. And honestly, very few assisted living communities do, because they don't make as much money and they want to take only private pay customers. And so then mom's getting kicked out. And so they have to go find okay, well then what are the places around me that do accept Medicaid? And then when they see them, sometimes they're very disappointed, and then they're uprooting someone who has been very comfortable. So that's a situation. Mm-hmm. And then you have situations that I'm sure you guys have seen too, where just there's some cognitive decline, and then it sometimes can be quicker than you think. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, what do we do? Is it safe to keep them here at home? Do they need to be relocating with me? Do I want that? Where else would they go? Can I explore those options? So they're just exploring what should happen, what should change. And then I've had some clients that are literally planning ahead, which is just a much more proactive conversation. And so I've had an elderly couple that were like, we just want to kind of have some stuff figured out before we get there. And I've had adult children who've been like, I know this is part of my future horizon. So what are some things I can be doing? So I see people all across the spectrum. The great thing about finances is that wherever you are in your care journey, there are questions and challenges that you're thinking about. So there's always something that can be addressed wherever you are,
Can you play out a little bit of what the end scenarios are, comparing somebody who comes to you proactively versus somebody who comes to you with one of those situations that's more emergent?
So when someone's planning, you can do a lot more, especially with an elder law attorney and a financial advisor. So with a financial advisor, you can say, okay, let's look at the profile of all my financial assets that could be liquid, and think about the smart one, which ones are the smartest to use first, because there can be an order to them. If this one sits here and matures a bit more, and you tap into this one and then switch over on this date, so there's these really elaborate plans that can get put in place. And the benefit can be the money can last you longer, and they will really educate you on how to get the money out with the least amount of tax repercussions as possible, which is always something families should think about, because they're like, well, that money's ours, and that's absolutely true. But then when you go to take it, the government's like, yeah, but we'll take some of that, So that can be heartbreaking for families, because you lose a certain amount of money just by trying to get the money that was yours to begin with. When it comes to an elder law attorney planning, because elderly individuals are living so long, my perspective is it's not a matter of whether Medicaid is something that is going to be part of your situation. It's a matter of when. Like, everybody is going to outlive their money. No one has the amount of money to finance 15 years of long-term care, right? So having that conversation with an elder law attorney to say, like, what should we do with our teammate who's our financial advisor, to say, what is the year we should target, to say, like, this might be the time that we apply for Medicaid, and have like a trigger moment that we're going to switch over to Medicaid. And they actually can work with families to map that out for them, to say, like, you're going to use your own money in these very smart ways. This is some financial assets we're not even going to touch, and this is how we're going to keep it protected so the government won't count it as an asset in the future, and then go on Medicaid on this date, and then you'll be riding happy. So they kind of that's a very mapped out timeline, but you can't do that if you're like 15 years down the line and you're like, we've already run out of the money, or I've even seen a family where the son did what, I feel like I would have done the same thing. Like, mom was in a really bad financial situation, and to just like, oh, I don't want my mom to worry about that. They're like, Mom, just sign the house over to me. I'll take care of it. Then when they went to apply for Medicaid considered that a gift, and they gave them a 5-year penalty. And so then she couldn't get Medicaid for 5 years and just had to sit and wait it out. And all they were trying to do is do something from the heart to just like take stuff off of, and you don't know. And so you're making these
heartbreaking
mistakes. Exactly. But you're just trying to do good, so that's where it helps to, like, don't make big decisions until you just like talk to some professionals, be like, would this be a good thing or a bad thing for us? And they can tell you. And then it's not about the good or bad thing morally. It's about what's the right or wrong decision in this system that we're living in, and how are they going to view it, so that you can like navigate it well and not set your family up to like hurt any of the assets that are in place.
I'm really glad that you said that, because, obviously earlier we were talking about, there's this huge number of people that you have to go get, or that you have to connect with and talk to and get advice from, and a lot of them cost money. But the fact is that our system is actually so complicated that you probably really, you do need to work with professionals who understand the law, who understand healthcare, like who can actually help you navigate these things. And the right professional really should help save you financially. Like, they should help save you money. Even though you are paying that person, they should help save you money in the long run, versus, just being like something that's out of pocket. And I think that's something that is sometimes like hard. It's hard to wrap your mind around, right? Because if someone is asking for, let's just say like $1,000 is a round number, you're thinking, oh my gosh, $1,000 right now is a lot of money. But if going through that allows you to have mom or dad's assets protected in such a way that will save maybe tens of thousands of dollars, like, that's a good investment, But I think it's so much about trying to find the actual right professional and the right person, and making sure, I would say, there's predatory people out there who will tell you all kinds of things. Making sure that you're really talking with someone for that advice who is like a licensed, someone licensed by a regulated body, I guess I should say, right?
Yeah. And just like have your best interest. Because in our culture, like, finances is not an easy thing to talk about. There can be a lot of some of your like lower, more negative feelings. Like, you can feel ashamed or guilty or embarrassed. There can be a lot of emotions that surround having these financial discussions, and it could be this like, oh, going to talk to somebody, it means I'm going to have to reveal that my mother is financially destitute, or she was really bad with her money, or she was taken advantage of by other people, or, we need to shift our mindset to be like, it doesn't matter where you are financially. All that matters is you're trying to get into a situation where you can give your parent the longest, healthiest life possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's systems that can help that happen. You just have to like play their game, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the sad part to me is that it feels like, if you're proactive or you're looking for some solutions, you should be able to just like look up the information. Like go online and be like, okay, I think my mom needs to go to senior living. How much does this cost? And what should I do? And how much is it going to cost to take some money out of retirement? Like, I feel like those should be fairly straightforward answers, but because, like you said, our system is so complicated, including both the financial system and the healthcare system, and most people have very little experience with it, if any, in this way, that is why professionals are needed. And especially if you get a professional that is recommended to you by somebody else. And so like one of the things that, clearly I'm always happy to recommend great professionals in our area to do things. But if you don't have somebody to connect with, I feel like you should just talk to the people around you, because likely your friends and family are dealing with this in some form or fashion, but because we don't like to talk about finances and challenging things, we might not recognize that they're going through this, and they've already called lawyer A and they were trash, and they went with lawyer B, and they could just save you the hassle and be like, oh yeah, I worked with lawyer B and he was really helpful to do da 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 da, but you would never know that if you didn't open up to say that. And I think that's why one of the reasons why I feel like the podcast is really important, and like sharing information in this way is really important so that people can feel more comfortable, talking about it, even if it's by sharing some podcast or some other piece of information with somebody else, just to know that, oh, my head is here too. I'm a person you can talk to about this, and we can work on this together.
Mm-hmm. I think talking to your friends is a great way to get recommendations for professionals that made them feel comfortable, that were very welcoming, maybe that were even very inclusive. But when it comes to the nitty gritty of like the financial thing they got help with, like that doesn't often translate from family to family, because there's so much unique and nuance to every family. So it might be, we used this elder law attorney and they were just like really great to work with. They were really accessible, and they treated us with so much respect. That's the thing you're looking for. But they might say, oh, they helped us with XYZ, but then you're like the assets or the things you have in place versus the things you don't have in place look completely different. So it's one of the parts about care. It's hard to get recommendations for the financial things from your peers, but you can get recommendations for great professionals who like left us feeling good, left us feeling like they got treated holistically,
Yeah. I think honestly, same actually for healthcare recommendations. Get a recommendation for a provider that someone really had a good experience with. But what I would say, people get into trouble all the time getting recommendations for equipment from friends or family. Or, oh no, you're fine, you just need to do this exercise because that's what I did, or that's what my Aunt Sally did, or whatever it was. And most of the time these are not good recommendations for the same reason. It's because everyone's situation is slightly different and nuanced, and like there's the reason that we have these professionals who go through all these years of school and all this experience in order to work with you as an individual and provide that correct recommendation. And it's because it's harder than saying, well, my hip hurts and your hip hurts, right? These aren't necessarily the same exact thing. Totally. It's not apples to apples. A lot of times it's apples and zucchini. So anyway, point well made and well taken. I think there you go.
Way to throw out the random produce. Yeah,
listen, exactly. In college, I had this habit of turning everything into a metaphor about food. And it was one of like my study habits because it would help me remember things really well. took a constitutional law class in undergrad, and that stuff is like, it's kind of complicated. And I made every single case into a metaphor about crackers.
Wow.
Okay.
And for the most part, it worked. My TA looked at me like I was insane, but then afterwards he'd be like, "No, that works." Okay.
That makes sense.
So anyway, that's probably,
you might have taught it after you left using all your analogies.
all my cracker stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. Just food makes for good comparisons, I guess. Okay, or not. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, I think that's probably a good place to wrap us up here today on Care Lab. Anything else that, Kimberly, that you want to add to what we talked about here today, and sort of, some closing thoughts for listeners?
I think just to put like good context around what I'm doing, I am not a financial advisor or an elder law attorney or any of those professionals that I will point you to, nor do I sell any kind of financial products. So I'm not like trying to sell you any kind of insurance products or anything like that. I am like that person that you can ask, here's some stuff that we're dealing with financially. Who are the right people for us to go talk to, and what are the right questions to ask them? And I just like point you in the right direction and set you up for hopefully the most empowered conversation with them. So like your little navigation buddy, or I'm the map at the mall that tells you where everything is and what they sell,
Ooh, I like that.
Not food, but a different kind of, yeah. I guess I could have said I was the food court. I don't know. I'll come up with it.
I think map is, I think more like that did it for me. I was like, got it.
Perfect.
Understood.
And if people want to connect with you after this, how can they best do that?
Yeah, the best thing is my website. So it's eldercaresolutionsinc.com, and that should set you up for a lot of success on just like how we're putting ourselves out to help with caregivers and the different ways that you can engage with us to get the help that you need.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here on Care Lab today. You are very appreciated, and it was so fun talking with you.
It was great to spend time with you guys.
All right, we'll see you next time on Care Lab. Oh, before I forget, everyone, if you like this episode of Care Lab, please make sure that you are subscribing to the podcast wherever you are listening to the podcast. Or if you're watching it on YouTube, take a second to hit that little button, that little subscribe button. Take a second to hit the like button. And please make sure that you are sharing it with people around you who might also benefit from this information. Okay, now we're done. See you next time on Care Lab. Bye.
Bye.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.